Yo, 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 yo. What's going on, bro?
What's up?
We back.
We back,
We
baby.
back. Finishing 2020 with a bang. Inshallah, 2021 with a bigger bang. I'm feeling good, Jabril. How are you?
Bro, I'm excellent. I'm feeling energized. I'm feeling well rested. I feel like we got something on our hands. We got something big on our hands today.
Dude, we got a really big guest ahead of us. But before we spoil, y'all, time to kick the show off.
Oh, yes. Muhammad, you already know. Give me the countdown, baby.
Baby, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everybody? This is Wafa
And
Salam.
Muhammad Hassan.
And you were listening to the Young and Muslim Podcast.
Asalaamu Alakum, everybody.
Brr.
So like I said earlier, we have a phenomenal guest with us today. A teacher, a traveler, an entrepreneur. Wafa Salam. Asalaamu Alakum, sister. Thank you for joining us.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. How does it feel to be on episode 111, 111? Conspiracy theorists are going crazy right now.
Oh, yeah. It's deep.
I just feel like the year 2020 has been just filled with a whole bunch of just conspiracy theories, theorists, and just people just saying a whole bunch of stuff. You said you fell for us?
I fell for a few.
What was a conspiracy theory you fell for?
The G5 towers.
Oh,
what is that?
Yeah, the G5 towers that coronavirus.
They told us stay in the house so the trucks can come out at night and put the broadband up.
Look, any conspiracy theory is convincing if you look into it hard enough. That's just a fact.
Okay, you see it then. But I feel like I shouldn't have told you guys this from the get-go because I feel like I'm going to get clowned for this for the rest of you.
Nah, you're good because we fell for them just slightly.
Your secret's safe with us. But yeah, Wafat, thank you for joining us. Definitely excited to have this interview with you. I know it's been a while. I mean, the last time we hired you on a platform was about a year ago since we did the IG Live. You were definitely one of our first guests, and we had so much fun. I know our audience loved this, so having you live on the podcast it's gonna be fruitful, you know.
Inshallah.
So, first question.
Yes.
Who is Wafa Salam?
Okay, wow, that's a good question. I am a teacher. I am an entrepreneur who just happened to start a business in Jamaica. I stumbled upon it, and alhamdulillah, now we're here. An avid traveler, I would say. Semi-good daughter. I'm all right. I'm trying. Born and raised in Northern Africa, Algeria. Moved to Canada when I was 10 years old, and I've been living in Toronto since then. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So from Morocco to
Algeria.
I'm sorry.
No,
from
we're all
Algeria,
family.
right? It's in North Africans, Morocco, Algerians, Egyptians.
Why you starting that smoke early, bro?
I know. So trust me, I'm in there too. I'm one of the enemies. But how did you get to Jamaica? Tell us that story. How did you start your business in Jamaica? What happened, and how did you get that endeavor started?
Dang, you asked 5 questions in one. You better be on your A game today.
Hey, we on it.
Bismillah. So let's see. When I moved to Toronto, so we first left Algeria, moved to Montreal first, the French-speaking part of Canada, because Algeria was a former colony, so we spoke French. When I moved to Toronto, I was about 13, 14 years old. So as a young kid, I started going to the mosque. Alhamdulillah, my father had picked a house very close to the mosque. And the mosque that I went to was Arab and Pakistani, predominantly Pakistani. But I started to meet a lot of converts from all over the world. So predominantly the Caribbean, Trinidad, Guyana, and Jamaica. And I couldn't help but gravitate towards them because they were very laid back. They were very different than the Pakistanis and the Arabs. They were less conservative, more laid back. Even when I went to the Trinidadian or Guyanese mosque, it's not that it's for Trini or Guyanese people, but a lot of the community members go. I just felt like there was no awkwardness when men and women dealt with each other. So that was my first attraction to the Caribbean, I would say. And then in my university years, I started going to a revolutionary bookstore. But you want to talk about conspiracy theories? Oh, you're not ready. So, I would hang out at the Revolutionary Cafe, hang out in the backyard. And, I was one of the youngest ones, really. And, I just started meeting a lot of Rastas. And they were so intriguing to me. I was like, man, they're just like us. Their political views are very similar to ours. They were so unapologetic about who they were and their roots. I was like, oh man, I gotta look into this. So that's really when my attraction to, or my interest to Rasta culture began. Started listening to reggae music, and that's how I learned patois. And then I saw that Rastas were very proud of who they were. I actually remember a specific conversation I had with a Rasta. I was walking down the street and I heard Muhammad. And I was like, oh God, somebody's calling the Prophet's name. So I gotta represent. I gotta see what's happening. So I turned around and I was like, me? And he's like, yes, you, Muhammad. At the time I was wearing hijab. And then he said, are you not a follower of Muhammad? I was like, yeah, I am. He's like, well, how are you today, Muhammad?
Yo, that's funny.
And I was like, I'm good. So we started talking, and he talked about how I should be proud of being Muslim and I shouldn't deny my Muslim roots. And as, you know, living in Toronto or living in Babylon, as they like to call it.
Babylon.
You know, just like it sticks to Islam.
Hold on. So Toronto is Babylon. This has been Babylon this whole time?
This is Babylon. I mean, all of it.
All
of the Western world.
Oh, wow. Who knew?
All of the Western world is Babylon to them. So, you know, I was just there getting schooled. And so, first of all, I'm embarrassed because the man is, you know, clearly reminding me to be a better Muslim. You know, that was it for me. And then I was doing a minor in history at the time in Middle Eastern studies. And I started taking courses on Caribbean history. And took a few courses, loved it, signed up to go to Peru and teach abroad. Asked my dad to let me go. It was my first trip, my solo trip. Went to Peru, and on the way back, I stopped in Jamaica. And so I was like, I just got to see this land, you know? I was there by myself, rented a little room in a guest house in the grill. Loved it. I really enjoyed it. But it wasn't a life-changing trip. Really, my life-changing experience in Jamaica was the second time I went. When I went 5 years later, I met the Muslim community. I went to my first masjid. I went to the mosque. I met people in the community, and I just fell in love. I was like, you know what? I'm going back. And the following year, I put up a Facebook status. I said, hey, any ladies who want to join me to go to Jamaica, let me know. I know some Muslims there. So 7 girls joined me and 2 kids. Some of these girls I knew, some girls I didn't know. And yeah, I took them around. We rented this little van, this little bus. One of the brothers, Brother Omar, owned it. We rented his van, and we rented this little house in the country. Brother Omar's cousin owned it. And that's basically how the trip started. Took him to the mosque, the waterfalls. And by the end of the trip, all the sisters were just sitting on the porch. And some of them were like, yo, you should do this again. You know, this is really fun. Yeah. And I was like, no, I can do this again and again and again. And that's how it happened. And then I started to, I think 6 months later, I had a first official retreat. And I must have had like 4 in a year or 5.
Wow.
I didn't even know you could stop. I was like, okay, I got to just keep going. The other one.
And so you were doing this while you were in college?
So at that point, I had become a teacher. I had been teaching. Oh,
that's right. You said because it was 5 years later. Got you.
I became a teacher.
Wow. So what was it? Because you say it was a life-changing experience, you know, getting into Jamaica. What was it that was just so different?
So look, prior to that, I had spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I must have gone to Egypt 5 or 6 summers in a row. I had studied 6 months in Damascus, spent time in Portugal, the tiny island of Madeira. I'd been around and I'd seen a good amount of countries. Jamaica, you know, it's like, first of all, I met Brother Rashid, and he's still a very, very close friend to me. His born name is actually Tornado, which we just love because it's hilarious. That's his legal name, Brother Tornado. And he's anything but a tornado, the calmest brother you can think of. And so he picks us up, and we're driving to the countryside. We're on our way to the country, and we get pulled over by a cop. Like, what are the chances of that? We're speeding too in Jamaica, which never happens. So we get pulled over by a cop, and you know, Brother Rashid's dealing with him, comes back in the car, and I was like, oh, you know, Brother Rashid, what happened? He's like, well, you know, the gentleman wanted a bribe. You know, he was willing to let us go if we give him a bribe. But and then he goes in the Jamaican accent, he goes, but you know, me I tell him Muslims not take no bribes, you know, so write it down, son, write it down. And it's like, I just met this brother, and I'm in total good hands. This is going to be a good trip. This was, you know, the introduction. drive through the country, stop for watermelon, rain on the side of the roads. And then as we entered St. Elizabeth, which is the breadbasket of Jamaica, that's where most of the farmers are, there was a sign outside this house. And it said, God is God and God not sleep. And I was just like, okay, I love this place. It was just getting better and better. And then I think the decisive final moment for me was, yes, we went to waterfalls. We visited a beekeeper up in the hills, and he's a Muslim brother who lives by himself, has like a bunch of goats, and his parents are buried in his front yard, and he kind of made his house look like a little mosque. Oh, wow. He's the only Muslim in his neighborhood. It was life-changing meeting him too. But I think the culminating event was I was at the masjid, and I was making wudu outside, and then I went to sit, and I could hear both the adhan and just reggae music down the street, probably a local bar, to be honest with you. And I remember listening to both and being like, I don't even know if it was a dua. It was literally just a thought. And I thought to myself, this could be home. This could be some form of home. Not necessarily living here, but I could build something here. I felt something. Yeah. And that's, I think, in many ways now that I've been doing these retreats for almost 6 years, I think that I have attempted to recreate this feeling that I felt on every single retreat.
Wow. It's crazy how you had like the aha moment when you met a local. Usually when people travel here in the States, we have 50 different states. So each state is almost like a different country. But sometimes we get so busy, we just drive through them. We don't have time to go to like a local shop, pizzeria, or whatever it is. So I'm glad that you did that. And you miss out on so much when you don't connect with the locals and you just go to a big conference and you stay at the Holiday Inn, but you're out there in nature, which is beautiful. I kind of want to ask you, we heard so many different, I guess, stereotypes about people in Jamaica, in the Caribbean. So were there some things that kind of pre-notion that you had before you got there, and then when you got there, you're like, you know what, this is not how Jamaicans actually roll the Caribbean? Did you have any thoughts like that?
So I didn't have many, other than the fact that I heard there was a good amount of violence in Jamaica. I think Jamaica's, stereotypically known for that. Not to say that there's not violence. There is violence. It does happen. Ironically, it happens in the towns where there's the most resorts. Not against tourists, but it's mainly gangs and scammers.
Yeah. Everyone's competing to take your money, basically.
Wow. The middleman.
So that was it for me. But it's funny because I think when I would tell people I go to Jamaica, I would get this look from people, and I didn't understand. I was like, well, why are they? They're just like, Jamaica. And I was like, what? The mosque, the adhan, did you guys not? So they're looking at me like I'm, But so only to find out there's a good amount of sex tourism going on in Jamaica. A lot of North American women, Canadian, American, and British. A good 80,000 women go every year for sex tourism. They actually call it a few things: rent-a-dread, or rastitute.
I'm kind of offended, yo.
Rent-a-dread.
Wow. Well, that sort of African black fetishism has been going on for centuries. So I'm not very surprised that that's what people would assume when they would go there. But I think one thing that is interesting about that story is that you being a North African woman of lighter skin complexion, right? Mm-hmm. You going to Jamaica. What were some of the things that you were like, the confrontation that you were met with, especially when you first started doing these retreats?
Mm-hmm. It's I was very self-conscious because every time a local man spoke to me, I was like, okay, they think I'm renting a dread for sure. I need to just keep it, make it look very, very, professional. I have to make it look like that. So I was very self-conscious at the beginning. After a while, I didn't care because I think Allah blessed me with the Muslim community. And because I was Muslim, people just were very welcoming and very easygoing. And I wrapped my hair. I wrapped my hair a lot. So because I had it wrapped, sometimes they just assumed I was a Rasta. But if they would see me with Muslims, they knew that I was Muslim. And so right away, there's a different level of respect for any woman, I would say, in Jamaica that has a head wrap. Right away, it's just like, oh, sister, everything is, empress. It's cool. In some ways, it shielded me from all the other stuff.
Wow.
So, I mean, being a Muslim woman that's traveled to all these different countries and in Jamaica, I'm sure you got some pushback. And then, but then you see right now, mashallah, you even have the traveling like Muslima out in Jersey and Philly. They travel all the time.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, we have Flower Taifa. So it's becoming a lot more, you can call it like a normalized, accept, whatever you want to call it. But you just mentioned earlier, you said you were self-conscious. It might be going through some people's minds like, hey, that's why you need to travel with a man or you shouldn't be alone. So did you get some of that pushback? If you did, how did you respond to it?
Alhamdulillah, my family's been very understanding. I asked my dad even, I was like, Dad, why did you let me travel so young? He was just like, I had a feeling you were going to do it anyways. So, you know, if that's the case, then I would rather let you go and explore the world and come back.
I love that.
And I think he's just a deeply religious man. He made a lot of dua, you know, that we stay guided. Every once in a while I would meet random people, especially when I went to the Middle East. Especially like I went back to Egypt a good 5 times. And sometimes people would be like, oh, why a nice girl like you travel, you know? It's just like, I never took offense because I feel like I kind of get where they're coming from. Do you know what I mean? At least from a cultural perspective, not necessarily a religious perspective, right? So I'll just be like, well, you know, I'm just here and I'm in Allah's care and look, I'm with you and I'm talking to you and you're a good person. So, you know, we're...
people would be quiet real quick when you say that, right? They're like, oh, you're exactly right. I'm a good person.
Alhamdulillah. So the pushback hasn't been crazy strong. Alhamdulillah, I have to say it's been good.
Yeah. So you don't only do Jamaica with your retreats. Burgundy Roots is also in Morocco.
Yes.
How did this is random. How did Morocco get dropped into these Jamaican retreats by this Algerian Canadian girl
who's been to Egypt?
A
lot of conflicts.
So, you know what? I was thinking I wanted to diversify the retreats a bit. But in order for me to do that, I need to pick a place that I'm familiar with, that I have a connection with, that I understand the language and understand the culture. So in many ways, Jamaica became a second home, but I thought North Africa would be great. I speak the language. I know the place. We used to take road trips from Algeria to Morocco when I was young. And Algeria doesn't have any tourism. So I thought to myself, why not go to Morocco? And that's how it started. Because I really want to go places where I build a connection with the community. I need to go 3-4 times before I can even start or think of hosting a retreat there. It's important that I work with locals and have them know me and trust me, and then I can get going, you know?
So quick question, why doesn't Algeria have tourists? What happened?
So Algeria is kind of like Jamaica and Colombia in some sense. It has a violent reputation because of the civil war that broke out in the late 80s and we left mid-90s. So that's predominantly the main reason. The country is still a little bit unstable, but also there's a lot of natural resources and Algerians they're not in need of tourism. That's mainly that.
Okay. So when you got started in Morocco, how long was it after the initial retreat?
The one in Jamaica?
The one after the one in Jamaica, how long was it before you did Morocco?
So Morocco is interesting. It was about 3 years, 3.5. And Morocco came to be because, so I went through a breakup. And when I went through my breakup, I was like, you know what? I was paralyzed for a good little bit. Like, you know? We all know those ones.
It hurts.
Adele.
We feel you. We feel you. It hurts.
It hurts, man.
Hold on. I already know how this story goes then. She got up on her. Stella got her new groove back. She was like, I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna make myself look good.
She wrote some albums, some Adele.
Yeah,
sang a little bit.
Some Jasmine Sullivan, and she ended up in Morocco.
Pretty much clear my head, clear my skin. Let's go. And that was it. I built my website within that mourning period, if you will. Built my website, added Morocco to the itinerary. Did a trip to Morocco. That was a very good motivation. The breakup was a great motivation.
So from like a entrepreneurial and business mindset and standpoint, every time you went to Jamaica and Morocco in the retreats, right? I'm sure you had to continue to build those relationships because you had to come back, right? And you brought people back. How did you have those conversations, especially in Jamaica, when you really weren't with the culture. It might have been a little bit easier, I'm assuming, when you went to Morocco because you're also North African, so I'm sure it's easier to get by, or maybe it wasn't. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So, to me, Jamaicans have a reputation in the Caribbean, right? And so do Algerians in the Arab world or in North Africa. I see so many similarities between Algerians and Jamaicans. Our sense of humor is the same. Obedient, unruly ways are the same. Algeria had the biggest revolution in Africa.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know this, but Eldridge Cleaver, the leader of the Black Panther Party, was exiled in Algeria. Many of the Black Panther Party members were exiled in Algeria. Algerians are known to be, well, a little hot-tempered, I must be honest.
Yeah.
But very honest and very funny. I found Jamaicans to be the same way. So when I went to Jamaica, they would often tell me, when the slave trade happened, the most rebellious slaves were dropped off in Jamaica first.
Wow.
So they had one of the biggest rebellions in the Caribbean. Their history is very, very profound, and you see that in the spirit of the culture. Everyone is very much their own man. I feel like Jamaica is a country of lemonade stands. No matter what, people are always hustling.
Mm-hmm.
That mentality of always having to provide for yourself because the government won't do that for you is very embedded in Jamaica. And of course, there's a dark side to every place. There's this concept of what you call the bad man mentality, of the gangster mentality, so to speak.
You don't pull up on me. You can't mess with me.
Exactly. And it's just like, we even make jokes on our retreats, the bad man is so bad that, the bad man don't drink water. He doesn't eat cake. So bad, he just doesn't,
He don't sleep.
Right? But yeah, so in many ways, there was a learning curve in Jamaica, how to operate, but I was aware of who I was. I was aware that I was Algerian and of African descent, but white passing for Jamaicans. It's funny. It's only when you're outside of Africa that people can comprehend that you're African, right? When you're in Algeria, or when you're talking to Africans in general. If I meet a Nigerian or a Senegalese and I say I'm Algerian, they're like, you guys are Africans, the crazy Algerians, the usual.
Yeah. So how is that? Because we have those talks, right? I'm African American, so it's like I know what I know here. How is that when you come to a place where you're like, I'm African, people are like, but you're white?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that feeling like?
Well, it doesn't feel too bad, to be honest with you, because you can't expect people to understand all your nuances. Jamaica's a tiny little island. They don't really know this and that. But for some reason, even my name in Jamaica got me very far in life, to be honest with you, because to them, they're like, Wafa? Where you from? You're not a regular whitey. And you're like, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm Muslim and I'm this and that. So the treatment is different. But other times it's like, I was at the airport just a few months ago in Kingston, and all the women's washroom was dirty. It wasn't flushing. None of the toilets were flushing. So I asked the caretaking lady, I said, hey, what's going on with the bathroom? She's like, they told us to lock off the water. I was like, oh, come on, it smells. She's like, I know. And then she said, you have light eyes. Go talk to them.
Oh.
And I was like, chew, let me try things. Let me go and see what I can do for us, And then, nothing happened still. But still, like, she dropped it on me casually, and I wasn't gonna get offended. I understand what she's trying to say.
Yeah, you got the awareness. You know what your skin tone can do, and the privilege it has.
Right. So I think at some point you just have to be aware of your privilege. I don't think you even need to feel bad about your privilege. I think what you do with your privilege determines whether you should feel bad or not. If you're going to use it for a good cause to advance people, then yes, alhamdulillah. But just don't pretend it doesn't exist. It's just too much lies.
So being in Jamaica right now, and you talked about some of the privileges, right? It sounds like being a Muslim there was a privilege. What is it? Is it the history? Is it the people? Why in Jamaica were they respecting women and Muslims so much? You can look at a country like France that's all over the news, which has Muslims on their national soccer team all over the world doing great things, right? But still be treated the way that they are. Why is it a little bit different in Jamaica, you think?
I think I can summarize it to you, and with a little story. On my very, very first retreat, before it was even a retreat, I wanted to take the girls to the mosque. I had a couple of girls who arrived early, and I was trying to take them to the mosque. But I forgot where the mosque was. We were in the area, and I was just like, is it further down this way? Is it that way? So we stopped by this shop, and it was a Rasta man sitting there. And there was a painting of Malcolm X behind, and there was a painting of Marcus Garvey. I can't remember who else, but big, powerful black leaders. And I asked a Rasta, and I was with 3 girls at the time, 3 of my guests. I was asking a Rasta, I said, Rasta, do you know where the mosque is? I'm looking for the place where Muslims pray. And so he looks at me, and Jamaicans, they're so funny. You never know what you're going to get. He looks at me and he's like, you Muslim? And I was like, oh man, how do I answer this? But at the same time, I have to be honest because I've got my girls with me. I'm not going to look like a punk. So I'm like, yes. And then he looks at me for a second and he's like, I love Muslims, Oh God, thank God. He's like, because anywhere you go, you just fight against the system and you're against Babylon.
Oh. Babylon.
So
he's like, rate that. I respect that. I rate it.
Respect.
Can you explain that just a little bit? Like, what is the fight against Babylon? Like, why is that, and what is that?
Mm-hmm. So, in the Rastafari faith / political belief, because I think it's very much it's both. There's this concept of Babylon, and Babylon is the Western world. It's the European world. It is what the Western world has done through the transatlantic slave trade, through colonialism, post-colonialism, neo-colonialism. It's the G5 towers, okay? It's the canned food. It's the...
It's a coronavirus.
Sugar. Everything. The Illuminati, the New World Order, you name it. It's all that. And that's what it represents. Funny enough, when I take my guests up to Rasta camp on the retreat, we trek up, and then it's always so funny to me because I know what the priest is going to say. Listen, I know a good amount of things about Rasta belief, but you imagine I got 30 Muslims going up Rasta camp. They're sweaty, they're happy, they're excited to meet the priest. And then the first thing he asks them is like, but it's always a new question every time, but things like, are you ready for the end of the world? Are you ready for the New World Order? Do you know about the microchip? And then he proceeds to show them this really cool painting Rastas have of spaceships and blood everywhere and the pyramids, and this was going to happen. This is the prophecy. So they're very much, they're deeply connected to the prophecy. And all of that stems from Babylon, from the system of corruption that doesn't have God, so to speak, at its center. And so anything that's Western or post-colonial is they'll just say a Babylon thing. That's a Babylon thing. Don't bring that around here.
Yeah.
It must have been a little bit hard for you. Because you're you lived in Canada for a little bit, so you're just like, this is kind of what I know.
Oh yeah, no, but I loved it. I was all about the Babylon stuff.
You like down with Babylon?
No, I believe this, guys. I believe this, right? So it's what's actually hard for me is to come back to Canada and have to deal with this overly rigid politically correct self-righteousness. I think that's the hard part for me. You say this, it's like, well, you can't say that. That's not correct, and you can't say this, and it's like, what? What do you mean? When you travel around the world and you move around a lot, it's just weird coming back. It's very weird.
So then that begs me to ask a question: why stay in Canada? And I'm not like a Trump person, then if you don't like it here, then leave. But why? Because I know plenty of people now that are leaving the West, and I'm like, I might not be far behind you guys. So why not?
Because I like the best of both worlds.
Fair enough.
I got my family here. I got my base. I'm still teaching full time, so I've got that. And there's things that are not deniable. You got to have good health care. You got to get, have a good dentist. You have to have a good facial lady, for God's sake.
Hey, exactly. At the end of the day, you know the difference between a Western nation and just another country that's less advanced. So being a teacher, as you are, and being somebody that has traveled a lot, what's the difference between teaching about traveling, and traveling yourself?
I think that when you teach about teaching, you're essentially sharing a lot of knowledge, cultural knowledge, religious, all of those things, which is beautiful things. But traveling, you are ultimately learning new feelings. You learn feelings that you've never experienced before. I think that's the most beautiful thing about traveling. You just feel things that you've never felt, legit. Whether it's... I remember being in Portugal during the World Cup. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I was wearing a proper hat at the
during
time.
The World Cup? Oh, you...
I know exactly what you were doing there.
I was in Lisbon during the World Cup. That's when Brazil lost. The shameful loss was like 7-1 to Germany.
7-2 to Germany. Oh my God.
I remember that.
I was just there wandering around the streets of Lisbon and not speaking the language, trying to order. I think I was trying to order grilled chicken breast, and I didn't speak a word of Portuguese. My French didn't help. My Arabic didn't help. Portuguese was quite different. It took me a little time to get used to it. So I'm there like going like, whoop, whoop, and then pointing at my chest like, I want chicken breast to get me. Little things, These little things are so fun. And they're like these little moments you have with strangers, waitresses. And, I remember there's a lot of Bangladeshi brothers that work in Lisbon in cafes. Mm-hmm. And every morning I would go to this cafe. And I don't know if you know anything about Portugal, but they got these banging custard tarts. And every morning, because the brothers saw that I was a Muslim sister traveling alone, he would like bring me two extra tarts on my plate. And he used to be like, I just live here. I'm a worker here, but you're my Muslim sister, and I just wanted to give you some tarts.
I love it.
See that, but I think that's one of the perks of being a woman when you travel is like you get that little bit of good attention.
I'm not getting no tarts, guys.
Yeah, we ain't gonna get no tarts. We just get dirty looks.
Some water, man.
So there was a verse in the Quran. I was looking for it now, because I always like to try and have it on hand. But it's in Surah Nur, where Allah says, "And I recommend travel for you as it leads to spiritual perfection." I'm paraphrasing, but it's somewhere along those lines. And I've traveled a little bit. Right, but with you have traveled to so many different places, like you say, it changes your feelings and your understanding of the world and things. What do you feel like travel has contributed to your own spiritual perfection, your own spiritual journey?
I think travel has made me and has kept me very curious. And I think curiosity is very important for spirituality. Because you never get bored of getting to know people, of learning from people, learning your deen, learning different deens, different religions altogether. You keep this thing about you that keeps you bubbly for a very, very long time. And I think, ultimately it's just curiosity that builds within you, and you're just open, no matter where you are, even if they're not, living Islamic lifestyles, you're in a country that's not Islamic, you just, I had interesting experiences in Miami, of all places.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And whoa, of all places, Miami? Okay, that's interesting. I remember staying in a hostel in Miami with like a bunch of Japanese girls that didn't speak English and a 90-year-old Haitian woman. I don't even know if she lived in that hotel, but and I was like, what's going on here? And people from all over the world in that hostel, I'm hanging out with them. They went to the club, and I'm just like, well, I don't go there, so you guys go ahead and do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm walking down Miami by myself, and some drunk girl steps on my flip-flop, okay? And she rips my flip-flop, and I have to walk back to the hostel with one flip-flop, okay? It's a lot of walking to do, and I'm like, this sucks. Anyways, walking down the street, a few minutes later, I bumped into a friend from Toronto, of all places. This little Palestinian guy that I know. And I was like, Yusuf, what are you saying? He's like, Wafa, what are you doing? He looks at me, I'm not wearing a shoe. He's like, oh God.
He's like, oh, it's been pretty bad since I last saw you.
Typical Miami.
Well, it turns out Yusuf just bought a pair of Clarks, so he gives me his flip-flops because we're the same size because he's like a little guy, mashallah. He gives me flip-flops, he puts on his new Clarks. We go sit down at a shisha cafe and just chill for the night.
Clutch.
I think these things are spiritual. I know it sounds a little crazy, but...
Yeah, I think it leaves you open to God's plan in a way. And I remember one of the last trips that we took, we traveled to Las Vegas. We were in Vegas for a while. And it was a lot of things going on. Obviously, Vegas is Vegas. Like, the people we went there with were going to Vegas for Vegas. Like the Strip. But we definitely just were like, let's see what happens. Like, we end up hiking on some mountain and walking almost 20 miles. Like, it was nuts. And then we end up sneaking into like a racetrack and seeing like Bugattis and all this. It was just like, we had no plan, and we didn't like, we didn't try to control our lives like you do when you're home. Like, when you're home, you're like, I have a regiment, I have this, I have that, I got work, and you try to constrain it. But what I find is when you take the time to just relax and be in that moment of where you are, is very freeing, and it's an experience you never forget. Like, you're never going to forget walking barefoot in Miami, or barefoot in Miami.
Pulling through.
Yeah, like that's why. Where's Yusuf now? Like, I
gotta hit him up. I just think it's like, I haven't spoken to Yusuf since so long. I'm gonna check on him.
And I like what you said earlier about it's a new feeling, right? That's why when you travel, you get like that traveling bug. I remember when I went to San Diego for the first time out in California. I loved it. And I was there for just like a work trip, and I literally had like my work clothes on. I was like dressed up on the beach just because I took a little break. And when I was there by the cove where the seals come out, I actually saw this girl I went to college with. She randomly just popped up. I was just like, whoa. She went to like a small school with us, 1,400 kids down in Virginia Beach in Norfolk, and I see her a few years later at that beach at the other end of the country. And I know traveling alone has given me a surreal feeling, and I know that you've traveled alone and you've brought people back with you. Tell me the difference. Do you recommend people traveling on their own first? Because what I've noticed when you travel with people, sometimes you're on their agenda. They may not want to do stuff. They may get tired. So tell us the differences between the two, between traveling alone and traveling with people, and the feelings that you got with it.
Absolutely. I love traveling by myself. I really, really enjoyed it, because I think the pros of traveling by yourself is that you're open to all these experiences. You're going to meet more people, and people will approach you more. So that's a given. Now traveling is in a group. I recommend it, but I think it depends where you're going. So to give you an example, like a place like Jamaica, it's not an easy place to navigate. You got to know people. You got to know where you're going. It can be intimidating. You want to maximize your time, and you want to figure certain things out, right? Mm-hmm. So a place like that, I think, and there's other places where I recommend group travel. But I think it also depends on your upbringing and how many risks you're willing to take. Because I think for some people, even going to Portugal might be something frightening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it really all depends on your comfort zone. But traveling with a group of people can also be super fun. It's like, especially if you're traveling with friends or just strangers that you just meet. Mm-hmm. I've been to a few retreats in Spain. I went to southern Spain, a few Islamic retreats, and had a blast. I'm still friends with the sisters, and we've been friends for years now.
Nice. Where do you find like the retreats that you've been on and traveled? Are they just like out there, or did you have to know somebody to know somebody?
So do you know what? I didn't go to very many. I ended up going to the same one 2 or 3 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and someone was talking about I don't know how I came across it, but it was a retreat in Spain offered by a group in Chicago called the Zawiya Institute. I'm pretty sure it's called the Zawiya. And they've been going to Spain for many, many years, and they retreat in southern Spain, and it's kind of like a resort, so to speak, but it's not really a resort. There's a mosque, there's a few buildings for lodging, and it's a big estate, and you just spend the day in the company of people. You can go, I think there's a pool. They also sometimes go horseback riding and do some archery. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So we talked a lot about travel, right? Mm-hmm. But I want to get more into like your head and like where you've been, especially with this year, as crazy as it's been. You've been grounded pretty much the whole year, right? Have you even left Canada?
I have not. Last I left Canada was in March, and when I came back, everything was on lockdown.
Wow. Yeah.
So when we were the last day we were leaving Jamaica, we were actually supposed to visit the rest of the community, and they were like, "Yo, we've been getting ready for the end of the world. You definitely can't come."
Like, you didn't hear about Babylon?
No, I'm serious. They're like, "You're Muslim. We know you're our sisters, but we gotta lock it off."
Yo, they're like, "We've been waiting for this for a minute."
Yes. So not since March.
Wow. And for you, it seems like you've been thriving during this time. Like, I mean, obviously everyone's had their ups and their downs and, you know, the lefts and the rights, but it seems like you've been working a lot during this for a different type of journey. And I look at like a very spiritual journey you've been on. Cause sometime I would say like early June, you started doing, like basically master classes with all these different professors and people of knowledge. And it's been really cool because you have a very big audience. So to open it up to everyone has been cool. Like you learn, we learn, and it's very enlightening. So, what ignited, I guess, this intrigue and wanting to just learn more about Dean, more about yourself, and and this includes like all the skincare and hair care and stuff as well. Look, if you're there for one part of what you do with your audience, you gotta be there for the whole thing. So the skincare, the spirituality is all there,
all in one.
I think what sparked it is it's my curiosity. It's kind of like Jamaica. I never knew it was going to be retreats, and now it's that. And I followed Professor Butch through Mustafa Briggs. And I followed Professor Butch, and we talked a little bit. We were talking actually about Jordan Peterson and some of the interesting views he has. And before the George Floyd had even started, I messaged Professor Butch and I said, hey, we should do a live on this issue. I think our community could benefit from it, alhamdulillah. And then, subhanallah, the thing with George Floyd happened, and we did a live that kind of went viral for my own little Instagram. I think it had about 25,000 views on my IG. It must have been shared over 1,000 times. So obviously it's something our community really, really needed, alhamdulillah. And then, I just feel like what made me continue is the barakah and the flow and the blessings that flowed from it.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they watch it, and from what I've seen, I've been able to catch, a few here and a few there. It's like you're asking questions that you genuinely have. It isn't like you're not catering to an audience or anything. It's like your curiosity, like you said, and that helps so many of us.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely a conversation. Like sometimes I know very little about the topic. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to listen. I don't have fancy questions. I just want to get the basics right. And I let them do most of the talking. I don't want to interrupt. I'm not an expert in the matter. I'm offering my platform for them to share their knowledge that I hope will be beneficial to our community, inshallah.
Inshallah. And that's dope. So you've done a lot of different guests. So you talked on things like healthy masculinity. I thought that was really interesting. Taqwa, fear, Tauba, metaphysics of halal. And that was the one you did with
Imam Dawood.
Yeah, Imam Dawood. You talked on love. You talked on ego, anxiety, depression, all of that. Of all of the talks that you've done and all of the things that you've learned, what has been the most surprising thing that you've learned?
Man, I think the conversation with Professor Butch about racism being satanic in nature really had me, speechless. When he talked about, Satan refusing to bow to Adam because of how he was made, and that Satan wants us to look at one another with that very same look, the same way he looks at Adam. He wants us to look at each other on that level. I was just like, whoa, because, I even told Professor Butch, we came out here hoping to get some advice to tell our aunties how to teach our aunties to not be racist anymore, to stop being racist.
Yeah.
We did not, I did not come on this thing I was just like, subhanallah, this is so much deeper. This forces you to eradicate it from your heart.
Yeah.
Give it a metaphysical explanation. It's, even with Imam Dawood, when he was talking about the different stages, the different sports and hobbies that they teach university students at Zaytuna College. There is swimming, horseback riding, or I think archery, and then horseback riding. And he was even explaining the metaphysics of that. Why swimming first in your sophomore year? Why horseback riding? And why archery? And I think the last one, I believe, is horseback riding, because it's this idea that you're riding this beast. And he was talking about a metaphor. He was comparing it to your ego. And ultimately, when you're getting older and you're finishing your years at Zaytuna, you're hoping that you can ride that beast and tame it. Whereas your first year, you're learning to swim. It's just a very,
you kind of learn how to just float. Yeah. Float in the world.
yeah, and I was just like, then I just started to think more of everything has a physical reality and a metaphysical reality, right? We are physical bodies, all of us right now, but there's a metaphysical reality to what we are. Everything has a metaphysical reality. That's the essence of Tawheed, even trees, even animals. And it's just so fascinating when you get into Tawheed and how Allah, but the idea that Allah recreates the universe every single time. That's what the creator is. It's not just like, I made you, now I'm going to take a step back. Everything is in a constant state of creation. Yeah, and then this just has my mind spinning. I've always been a big fan of Tawheed, of studying logic, of knowing metaphysics, science, understanding science and Islam, because we have a beautiful religion, alhamdulillah. There's no contradiction between science and religion for us. You know, we never had a problem. I think if it wasn't from the Muslims translating Plato's and Aristotle's work, it wouldn't be here today. Right. Even if we didn't agree with their philosophy, there's a certain thing in our tradition where we respect traditions even if we don't agree with their beliefs. I was looking into Sharia, and a teacher was giving a course. I think he also teaches a few classes at Zaytuna College, and Professor Jonathan Brown, he was essentially saying in Zoroastrianism, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is a belief that you can marry your daughter, or you can marry your sister, or you can marry your wife, and vice versa. Your wife can marry her son. And the idea was that they would keep the wealth within the family. The point is, in Islamic law, there's been cases recorded in Islamic law where even though we don't agree with these marriages, when a Zoroastrian husband and wife, even if it was an ancestral relationship, when a husband and wife went to court for a dispute, the Muslim qadi, the judge, would judge it as though they were married. Even though our religion does not agree with their union, we would still judge them on the fact that they were married, and we would respect that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's our tradition. This is not modern stuff. The modern stuff is the ignorant stuff that we deal with today. The short-tempered people that are not, or the political Islam.
Yeah. And I find that very interesting because when we started this talk, you talked about how you gravitated towards, you know, the Trinidadians and Jamaican, you know, the converts. And I've found the more that I've looked into religion, the more talks I've, you know, been able to listen to and so on and so forth, our religion is very laid back and it's very practical. There's nothing ultra complicated about it. It's like when you study and you listen to all these people, you're like, that's kind of common sense. Like if you're just a good person, it's kind of common sense. Even like we had Butch where we recently released this episode and he told us the same thing about Satan being the first racist. And I remember us sitting there looking at him for like a solid 2 minutes in silence, like it just makes so much sense. And the more you learn about this religion, the deeper you get, it's like the more complex things get, the more simple they actually get.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm blown away every single time. It's like my mind is boggled, but my heart's at ease. You know, my mind's boggled and my heart's at ease. It's like this amazing push and pull between the heart, the spirit. Yeah, no, I think that's really what keeps me wanting to share these things on my page. They're my personal interest. If you go on my phone and you check my phone history, it's like I've been Googling these things just for myself. But now I'm like, well, let me just share them. Let me screenshot this, or let me screen record this lecture. And then if it can benefit people, then at least I can compensate for my shortcomings, for the things that I'm not doing at the very least. If somebody sees this and they start, I don't know, believing in the deen, then I had a brother message me. He's like, hey, Salam, he's a convert. And he was like, thanks, you know, I have to confess that before meeting you, I was bisexual. And through reading a lot of your posts and your stuff, I'm starting to see things a little bit differently. I judged Islam pretty harshly on that, but you know, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and I'm realizing it's something an urge I'd like to tame or control. And I was like, cool, I'm glad you benefit from it and you don't feel excluded and discriminated against, right?
Wow.
And that's I'm saying, I mean, that's just a beautiful thing in itself, and I'm sure this while you've been on lockdown for the past like 9 months, seeing those messages, interacting with those people, what are some things that you learned about yourself? I mean, you already knew that you were very curious. So what are also something that you learned while being with yourself for the past 9 months, you know, in the house?
I realized I'm not the best listener. So I'm making a conscious effort at listening in full sentences. Yeah, I'm trying to just like slow down my thoughts. And if I remember it after the person's done their sentence, okay. If I don't, that's fine. Because I'm always in awe of people that are, I love people that are so present. You know, some people, you talk to them, you could just feel they're all there.
Yeah.
Their entire being is there. I just love that. So I think I don't think I learned. I learned that I'm not the best listener. And, you know, just instead of beating myself up over it, I'm just like, okay, let's deal with the issue. Now, how do I become a better listener? Because I can sit here and dwell all day about how I'm not a good listener. It's not going to fix my problem.
I like that. You found a solution rather than just sitting on it. And that's what a lot of us do. We're like, oh man, I'm not good at this. And then you just like give up on it. And I think as you get older, you kind of realize like you can't really go anywhere if you just like, you don't try and resolve certain things. You don't try and fix the things that can actually enhance your life.
Absolutely. So it's been such a fun quarantine. I learned a good amount. I learned a lot of things, period. Just knowledge in general. I just want to retain it. Do you know what I mean? I want to retain it. I want to share it. I want to... Again, it's one door opens and next one closes, another one opens, and it's just like this. And then I met Brother Mazen, Dr. Mazen, who is a naturopath in the community, who is also my therapist. Alhamdulillah. And I knew Mazen from, 11 years ago when I met him at the Reviving the Islamic Spirit conference. We were all just kids at the time. But Mazen is a fantastic Hakim. He's a healer in the community, very well versed in Islam, but very well versed in naturopathic medicine and trauma.
What is naturopathic?
Essentially the natural route. So they are looking at your diet. They look at your diet. They look at your saliva. They look at your sleep pattern. They look at your temperament, which temperament you are. And through talking to you through therapy, they're able to prescribe specific medicine, vitamins, an entire lifestyle change that's suited to your traumas.
Wow.
We call it somatic trauma. So that's when trauma is manifests itself in your body. Because again, remember, trauma is it's an emotional thing, but it takes on a physical form in your body if it's not dealt with.
What are some of those ways that it comes through? And I know we can all go to the live to check it out on your page, but I figured, why not you share a little bit of this knowledge now? Mm-hmm.
What would you say? It's what am I sharing?
What are some of the ways that like it can manifest in your body?
Okay. What are the ways? Sorry, I didn't hear that part. Man, it could be many ways. It could just be your lower back being very sore. You can feel tension in your shoulders. You can feel tight hips. I know that women hold a lot of trauma and a lot of stress in their hips, for example.
Wow.
So hence the yoga. The yoga is really important for both men and women. But you hold different even types of emotions in different parts of your body. It's pretty interesting.
I need to watch that one.
You should watch it. It's fascinating. It's like it's a combination of Islam, health, psychology, but a healthy psychology.
What do you feel like is the main difference between all these people that you engage with and them having that Islamic background versus, say a therapist that doesn't have that background, or, a professor that doesn't have that background? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I had a therapist who wasn't Muslim, so she didn't have that Islamic background. She was great listener. I benefited tremendously from what she had to say. But when you have someone that understands your metaphysical nature, that you could really... I mean, I could tell my therapist, in Islam we believe in this, and I'm scared of this, and the afterlife, and so on and so forth. She can help as much as she can. She'll try to guide me and not judge me, right? But someone that knows their deen will give you a type of... you're going to be more solid in your deen, because he's going to share information about the deen that's going to eventually straighten your path, and strengthen your faith. Whereas with the other therapists, you just feel understood. It's great to feel understood, but it's better to feel confident and know your deen.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're meeting a lot of great people along the way and on this path as you traveled. One thing, that I want to know is that, tell me more about the people that you've met. I mean, right now, I'm sure you've met a range of individuals that may be on the younger side, some of them on the higher side, being a pioneer. what have you seen as the commonality between people? Do you think people there's still good people out here? You know, do people still enjoy life, or are we all ruined and doomed for the next few? You know?
Are we all just going to fall with Babylon?
Babylon things.
Babylon things, you know?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that there's still good people out there, for sure. I do think that there's a lot of things that are taking us away from our fitra, from our natural state.
Okay.
Whether it's, I'm sorry to go back to the G5, but what I really meant by the G5 towers is that this technology messes with our electromagnetic system in general as humans. So I think that's interfering with our ability to love deeply, to feel deeply, to even care deeply about one another. Because you become more self-centered. You know, you go on your phone, post something on your Instagram, and just wait for some kind of gratification. Right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think there's some good people out there. Sometimes I get a little bit cynical. So I would say, I think as Muslims, for example, when we're talking about sexuality and when we're talking about man and woman, for example, our understanding of masculine and feminine, I think the lines are becoming blurred with, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word? With new gender theories. There you go. With postmodern gender theories, I think our lines are being blurred as Muslims. And I think it's important that we know our deen and that we know what Islam has to say about these things, and that we don't shy away from being like, it's cool that you believe that there's 13,000 genders. I come from a lifestyle and a religion and a perspective that there isn't that many.
Yeah.
You know? And that shouldn't be offensive. And, you know, we are Muslims at the end of the day. We're still a minority. We get disrespected a lot. So allow us to hold our beliefs and respect the fact that, you know, our views don't align politically with yours. So I think sometimes I get a little scared because I'm like, wow, we're now debating very, very basic fundamental things. And that's going to have a massive impact on children. Even like I teach kids, right? So I can't help but see it up close, right? So that's where I get a little bit like, oh, Babylon is here. But then, you know, I bounce back. I have a little conversation with Dr. Mazin or Imam Dawood, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah. It is tough, though, because there was a point in the world where Muslims were basically, we were the holders of everything, like science, mathematics, history, aquatics, astrology. Like we were in, our hands were in every sort of profession, and we dominated. And in this religion, we know our first duty is to try and give truth and justice, right? And to make things simple, like open people's minds to the simplicity of Allah and also the vastness of Allah, right? But when we live in this sort of society, we live in this world where, like you said, we're debating the basics of our existence. It does become, it bogs you down a little bit. But one of the things that excites me is that this actually gives us the opportunity to try and get ourselves in those positions again. Like, you know, whether you're doing IG Lives or a podcast or you're on television or you're a doctor, whatever it is, it's like we have to do a better job as Muslims as putting ourselves in positions where we have more influence over what our kids are learning. That's why it's like respect to you for being a teacher. You know, what they're seeing on TV, right? Because a lot of stuff, like you're saying, like I just see my sisters. I have two small sisters. They're being affected a lot by the stuff that you see on TV. Even, you know, us, like we grew up seeing some wild stuff, right? So it's like that stuff like stays with you and it affects you. So I just think that we're at a time now where I guess for lack of a better term, it's going to be, we're entering into a renaissance for Muslims. We're seeing Muslims in more political roles, more like more high up roles. Like we're even starting to see more Muslim movie stars, and for me that's really dope. Yeah. That's encouraging to see that we're starting to get on that main platform.
Absolutely, no, it's a big deal, and you know, I wish more of our Muslim influencers would lend their voices and platforms to people like Imam Dawood and Professor Butch and Dr. Mazin, so you can get this message out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think there was a quote by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. He said, the jihad of today is it's the jihad for what's between your two ears. And essentially, really, everyone is competing for your attention, for your brain, for rewiring it, so to speak, right? So we need to do a better job at getting out there, really getting out there, and inshallah khair, Allah, and ultimately God is good and Allah always wins at the end. So, all these Babylon things we talk about, at the end, it will end. You know what I'm saying? And Allah knows this, and this is all part of the prophecy. So it's like, there's nothing left after good but good. Allah is all that remains.
And what remains is what you mentioned earlier in regards to the fitrah, right? Like the true sense of who you are and who you are going to be. So I wanted to ask you a question, right? Being born in a Muslim country and traveled to a non-Muslim countries, can you kind of compare the two and talk about the fitrah? Do you believe that you had to kind of be a lot stronger in like the Western society rather than being in the Middle East where you should kind of already be on it? Or do you feel like in the Middle East you need to kind of revive your fitrah because it's more of a cultural spin? Like, can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good question. Depending on where you go in the Middle East, I told you I've gone to Cairo a lot of times, but Cairo was by far the worst place when it came to sexual harassment.
Wow.
And just men looking at you. I was very, very angry in Cairo. Nice. I love it. I love the mosques. I love the alleyways. I love all that. But it's just like, can't I just walk down the street and hear nothing? And listen, this is not me wearing tight clothes and asking to not be looked at, because we see a lot of that today too. You can't have best of both worlds. Everyone's got to play your role. Don't try to stand out too much. But it's not even that. It's like, even when I would wear my North African jalaba, which was long, there was always something. I remember to a point, I was like, I'm just going to put my headphones on and I don't want to hear a word from anybody. So I struggled. Cairo was hard. I can't lie. And I don't like to be the one that's always ripping on the Muslim world, because I feel like it's always the same scenario. But Cairo was definitely one of them. Malaysia, on the other hand, was not. Malaysia was amazing. I loved it. Went to Kuala Lumpur. I spent a good month there. I met these Algerian friends. I met these Algerian guys in an elevator at the Islamic Museum. And I remember going into the elevator being like, oh yeah, let's hear what they're going to have to say. They sounded like they were from the French suburbs, which is like the French ghettos. And I was like, okay, let's hear what these little rude boys are going to say. And then they never even talked shit. Excuse my language. They never said nothing bad. They were just like super cool. We ended up being friends. We spent a good portion of Ramadan together. We would go pray Taraweeh together. Matter of fact, when I would fall asleep during prayer, they would like have to sneak into the ladies section to wake me up and like, yo, we gotta go, I met some solid brothers. So again, Malaysia, we're North African brothers in Malaysia, had a blast.
Wow.
Looked at me. I was able to go around Kuala Lumpur. Oh, what a joy. What a joy. Malaysia is just so dope. Morocco was good. Yeah, you get a few stares here and there, but it's nowhere near Egypt. Syria was good too. You do get stares here and there, but I was also a foreigner. I was, I looked different. So to them, it's like, oh, it was more curious stares.
Why are you here? Type of stare, yeah.
Nice girl like you. Same story, right? So I think one thing I will say, though, traveling in the Muslim world, I remember being in Palestine. And I taught English in Nablus for a month in the West Bank. And there was a time where I was in Ramallah, in the West Bank, and I was trying to get back to Jerusalem. But after, there's a checkpoint between the two. And after a certain amount of time, there's no more buses from Ramallah to Jerusalem. So I was basically stuck in Ramallah for the night and had to figure out where to stay. Because, like, it's Ramallah, it's the West Bank. It's not like you can just book an Airbnb. That's not really how it works, So I talked to a friend of mine, and he called his family, and I think I ended up getting to their house at about 10 o'clock at night. And subhanAllah, I get there, there's a feast ready for me. There's no way to cook that. Like, they just, 2 or 3 types of meat and rice and all kinds of food. He gave me his sister's bedroom. So she had her husband and her baby. I don't know where they all went. They disappeared. They gave me the bed. I went to sleep. I woke up the next day, And obviously I didn't plan on staying out that night, so I didn't have any clothes. Whatever I wore the previous night, they washed and ironed overnight.
Wow.
My clothes fresh again.
Wow.
And that's something no one can take away from Muslims. Yeah, you'll get harassed, sure, but you can go up to any house and say, hey, I'm a traveler and I have nowhere to go. And people pulled through, you know? And that's the West Bank of all places, right?
SubhanAllah.
I mean, our prophet says, you know, if somebody's in your house within 3 days, treat them like no other than after 3 days, they're family at that point, right?
and then you can kick them out like family. You're like, hey, look, it's time for you to go, bro. Like,
But I did want to, because you mentioned, you know, very interestingly that you've been to Jerusalem and Palestine, even Syria, and you also mentioned Algeria with the revolution. How are those countries on the ground when it comes to just whether they're war torn or conflicts are going around? What are, like, I want to hear like some real insights, you know, and not what we hear from like the news all the time, you know, like how like what's kind of like the beat of the people
said
there?
Keep it real. Don't give us no fluff.
I really want to know.
Syria was beautiful. So Syria was right before the war, and I loved it. I was there for a good 6 months in Damascus. I had gone the summer prior to look for a school. So I don't even know. Somehow I found a family that rented a room in their house. So I stayed with this Syrian family. They had 2 daughters. One of them was learning French, so she was thrilled that I spoke French. Took me around Damascus. And then I was there looking for some schools to go study at the following year. Get to Damascus. It was beautiful. Man, that place is like... So there's 2 quarters, right? I went to school and I studied with a lot of Malaysians, Indonesians, Chechens, all basically Muslims who just want to study Arabic so they can know their deen better. And then also went to school with a lot of French people, Italians, you know, students that were just studying international development. So that was really cool to be able to hang out with everybody. Rukn ad-Din was the religious neighborhood, and then I stayed in Bab Tuma, which was the Christian neighborhood. It was the old city. I can't tell you. Alleyways, cafes, restaurants, art galleries, old homes that are renovated and turned into restaurants. I had the time of my life in Damascus.
Wow.
I don't think I cried as much when I left a place than I did when I left Damascus.
Wow. Have you been back since?
I haven't, because of the war. Like when I tell you I bawled, I was like, oh, Damascus is where they took that picture of me, and it ended up being I met a photographer in Damascus, and he took a photo of me, and he just said, can we meet the next... I was eating a chicken sandwich on a bench by myself. Just let me tell you.
All your good stories start with a chicken sandwich. All your good stories start with a chicken sandwich.
Chicken wings.
And then there was a group of Americans sitting there, and he was Spanish, and he said he was taking photos of people around Damascus and asked if he could take my photo. I said, sure. So he said, meet me tomorrow at this place. Cool. I go to that place. It's like one of those old homes. And this man shows up with one of those old school cameras. You know the ones where you got to put a thing over your head and you go like this?
What?
Yes. He just took 2 shots. You can't even see the picture. You have to wait a few hours for the photo to even show. So my man submits this picture to the Art Gallery of London. And it wasn't the winning picture, but for some reason, they decided that photo was going to be the main photo of the exhibit, which means that it was on every subway, every London Tube, bus, all over the place.
Wow.
My friends in Toronto that lived down the street from me, like I used to go to her house in my robe. She got married, moved to London, messages me one day. She's like, yo, what the heck is your photo doing in the subway in London? I was like, what? What do you mean? So that was it. He submitted it. Wasn't the winning picture. It was all over. And it's so funny because whenever I post it on IG, I get at least 12 to 15 to 20 followers that are like, yo, so you're the girl from that one. I was so happy there was a Muslim on the subway.
You should get paid.
I know, right? I didn't get paid. I called them. I was like, hey, the photographer never got back to me, but can you send me a poster for my dad, please? Because he just like... So, you know, like, yeah, so Damascus was beautiful. I don't know what it's been like since after the war, but it was such an incredible place. The West Bank was really cool too. I really enjoyed my time in Palestine. I had gone to Egypt for 5 weeks to study and backpacked to Palestine after with my best friend. So we extended our stay by 12 days or like 2 weeks. And, it was rough because it's like, we took a bus. We took a big bus from Cairo to the Sinai. So you get off at the Sinai. It's a good 8-hour bus ride. And then you get off, get your stuff out, get your backpack. Then you got to leave Egypt and cross into Israeli territory. And they don't play. So IDF soldiers at the border. We were interrogated for a good 4 hours.
What?
Wow.
We had to wait a while. It was beautiful. Like, we're right by the Red Sea, so it's great. But we had to wait a while, and it's like, if they're asking my friend questions, there's like, I think there's 3 guys asking questions. Yeah. So one in the middle asking questions, the other 2 just watching body language the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty intense. And then crossed over and then, traveled around Tel Aviv. That was interesting because we were ambiguous, so we never told anyone we were Muslim. We just wanted to know people's perspectives on the whole conflict.
Yep.
So we would talk to random people. Met some interesting people there too. Thanks to my broken flip-flop again. I walked into this restaurant and I'm looking at the guy that works there. I'm like, is he Israeli? Is he Palestinian? Like, what's what? There's this weird, it's like, the cowboy movies back in the day when they're like,
yeah.
Get ready to draw.
It's a standoff.
Yeah. So we got to talking. He ends up being Jordanian. His English wasn't great. He's like, wait, I called my brother-in-law. Calls his brother-in-law, this 18-year-old kid from Brooklyn.
Translate.
Mo comes and he's like, oh, what are you doing without a flip-flop? Come over to my sister's house. I get you some flip-flops.
Wow.
He ended up hosting us in Jerusalem. That was cool. So honestly, Palestine was so dear to the heart. They give us a very hard time to get into the mosque. Al-Aqsa was very hard to get into. There's 8 gates that you can pick from. But the old city is very big. So sometimes it's a 15-20 minute walk from one gate to another. And I remember the soldiers asking us to recite the Fatiha, asking us what the 5 pillars of Islam were.
Was it Israeli soldiers or Palestinian soldiers?
Israeli soldiers. Israeli soldiers got to decide whether you could go into Al-Aqsa or not. And of course they say it's for security purposes, but whatever. Yeah.
So
that was interesting.
When you were talking to the people on the ground, and I'm sure you spoke to both Israelis and Palestinians, what was their feel about the whole, land grab and the history of what they have between each other?
The Palestinians were just like, Adi, don't worry. Even, for example, when we weren't allowed into the mosque, they were just like, it's fine, don't worry. That's our life every day anyways. So we're just used to it. Don't make a scene. Don't worry about it. And we were just like appalled. Do you know what I mean? Israelis, honestly, they're living well. They don't really care.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there a long time ago. I don't know if it changed, but they don't really care because I remember her and I went to a bunch of different events. There was a reggae party, actually. Funny enough, reggae and dance hall are very, very big in Jamaica. Not in Jamaica, excuse me, in Israel, Tel Aviv. They love reggae music. And, we got there and it was just so ironic to see them sing these reggae lyrics, chanting down Babylon, so to speak, when they are Babylon themselves. I'm just like, you have no clue what you're singing, you have no clue what you're saying. Like, Peter Tosh wouldn't even perform in Israel. He's one of the biggest reggae artists. He passed away a long time ago. He took a firm stance on being pro-Palestine, yet you're here just,
playing his music, crazy.
So Israelis were living very well. But I gotta say, if they built that country and however long it took them to build it, they built it very well. The infrastructure is very nice. The roads are perfect. Wow. It's fun. It's fun if you're on the Israeli side, but we try not to spend too much time in Tel Aviv and get carried away with that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because we'll just forget.
Well, I look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as very similar to what's going on here in America and our history here in America. And for a lot of people don't know, but a lot of the civil rights activists actually spoke out against Israel and spoke on behalf of Palestine. And I find it very interesting because the same way that you say, the Israeli people were acting and, the music they were listening to, the way they lived is very much the same here. I think it's literally the same thing here. Like, they listen to, our music. They love our culture. They love our people. But then when it comes to actually us, we're expendable, we're expendable. And it's interesting how you can go halfway across the world and that experience is exactly the same, but
it's true.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it like that. It's true. And it's true because when it comes to you guys, they have to face themselves, and it's never going to happen. We tried to have even conversations with, I remember sitting next to a soldier the whole way, like literally AK-47, like his little guns poking my thigh next to me on the bus because they carry them with or without uniform in Israel. Everybody is in the army, right? And the whole way just talking about how Arabs are dogs and Arabs are this and that. And I was just like, okay, cool. I'm just a white girl. Like, I'm just backpacking around. So pay me no mind. Tell me more, and I'm just like, interesting. They have no care. They have no care for it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying there's more and more awareness now, but how much land are you willing to give back is my question. If you're good for you to be aware, great. But how much land do you want to give back?
Yeah. Yeah. And not to take anything away from, that struggle, but if you look at it over here, it's like reparations for the years and hundreds of years, even within the Caribbean, I know right now, and I meant to ask you this a while ago when we were like really diving into Jamaica, but I know right now that Jamaica's not technically being colonized, but the Chinese are taking over the Caribbean, and Jamaica is one of the biggest, places that they're exploiting. Did you experience any of that there? And do you experience any of that over in Toronto?
Definitely in Jamaica, the Chinese are taking over. So what's important to know about Jamaica is that I personally don't, it's a bold statement, but I don't believe Jamaica's ever left a state of slavery, because it went from physical slavery to political to economical slavery. The IMF came through, and the IMF and the World Bank came and lent Jamaica a lot of money. And, yes, some of that money went to corruption, sure, but that's not the point. Some of the money that was lent, and the money that they lent them, they said to them were very strict rules. You couldn't, for example, use any of that money for your farmers. So farmers could not benefit from these loans that the IMF and the World Bank were given. And that was to ensure that Jamaica would continue to import goods from the United States or other places.
Look at that.
And I've seen the Jamaican farmers say, can machete compete with machine? No, it can't. So whatever people eat at resorts, most of it is not locally grown.
Yeah.
The mangoes or the bananas, people don't understand how bad resorts are. Everything, the food imported, the furniture, everything's imported.
That's crazy.
There's something called leakage. Very little money goes back into the country.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one example. The Chinese now, they own hundreds of hectares in Jamaica. They built the highway recently, and the highway belongs to China. So if I want to go from, I don't know, St. Anne's to Kingston, for example, on my bus with my guests, we pay at least, I think, $50 US toll per bus.
Okay.
That's just to go from St. Anne's to Kingston, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours.
50 for a toll?
$50. Yeah, that's not.
That's
Average
crazy.
Jamaican salary is $500 US a month.
Oh, and then why don't you charge you $50 for 1 day trip? Wow. Yeah.
So you can imagine, very few people take the highway.
Yeah.
So the Chinese have taken over. They're building a bunch of things. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing in other places in the Caribbean. But it's just like, when do people ever make their money back?
Yeah.
That's why I was telling you guys earlier, Jamaica is a country of lemonade stands, because in circumstances like these, you have to do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hustle, which is very sad, because man, what a brilliant little place, brilliant little island that made such a big name for itself. Even Haiti. Haiti was the first country, I believe, in the Americas to get its independence in 1804.
Oh, yeah, they went ham. Yeah. They
Do you know that they stopped paying for reparations just a few years ago?
Yeah.
So when we got their independence, they had to pay the French X amount of money, because it's like, well, if we enslaved you guys, we would have made X amount of money from cotton and coffee and sugar. So what you're going to do now is just pay us for the next 200 years for taking your freedom. Yeah. And they stopped paying for it like less than 40 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's nuts.
Yeah, no, but it's heavy. It's really heavy. It's like, I mean, we discuss a lot of these things on my retreats because I want people to, you're coming here, you got to learn about the culture.
Yeah.
I want you to just climb mango trees and swim in lagoons. That's beautiful too, sure. But know where your food's coming from. Know that what you're eating was grown by local farmers. Know that that's supporting their families, and so on and so forth. There's so much more barakah in that. And
so what are some of the things that people that go on your retreats can expect, and what are some of the big takeaways that a lot of people leave with you, not just giving them the touristy version of it, but letting them know the real, the spiritual, the metaphysical of being in such a God-blessed place?
I think, the biggest piece of feedback I get from guests is I never thought Jamaica was so spiritual. I remember I had a brother born and raised in the States. His parents were from Afghanistan. He had never left America. So imagine now this guy travels for the first time by himself, and he comes with me to Jamaica 4 years ago, and I was still a small little thing. And he loved it. And he ended up coming back 4 years later with his sister, who had never traveled. And he said he wanted that to be her initiation trip to travel the world because it changed his life. And he sent me a message a few months ago, and he said, I just want to let you know that I found Islam in Jamaica, and that's all thanks to you.
Wow.
Because it has such a spiritual presence. So aside from nature itself, nature will ground you and bring you closer to Allah. So you are to expect beautiful lagoons, beautiful beaches, waterfalls, clear waterfalls, fresh springs, blue mountains. We visit the local masjid, the rastas up in the mountains, and then that's just what's on the itinerary. There's a lot of other things you can't really put on the itinerary. The side of the road hangouts, we stopped one time to go to a bathroom, and it was like a political rally. And we just like the leader of the political party who won recently, Anne-Marie Vaz, she took some pictures with the girls. She's like, oh, come. Like they were just, there's just like some twerking on the side of the road. We're like, what is this? We just came to use the bathroom.
Getting it.
What happened? I'm like, sisters, you ready to go? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, all right. Definitely that. But on a deeper level, I think you come to see people, what it's like to be around people that are very connected to their fitrah. Very natural people. Jamaicans and I think people in the Caribbean in general are all about nature. Like they're very present in their bodies. They're very present in their minds. They're not overly stimulated by Instagram and the fast life. At the end of the day, it's an island, right? I remember we had a group of brothers were praying on the side of the road, and a local asked the same brother that I told you came back on my trip and brought his sister. They asked him what they were doing, and the brother said that they were praying. And the local asked if he could join.
Wow.
If he could join the salat. If we need to stop on the road. Another time we had to stop on the road and pray outside my friend's house. I said, hey, Maurice, can we just pray outside your house real quick? Because, he's like, yeah, man, no problem. I don't ever think I had anybody bless my house. Bless my house.
I need a bigger one.
These little things, I'm just like, wow, subhanAllah. So I think you got to be prepared for these kind of little experiences. I don't have them on the itinerary. They just always happen.
That's dope.
What are some talking points, and I guess you could call them selling points for individuals that never traveled before? I mean, because that sounds good and dandy as somebody that has traveled and understand what traveling does. But what about those individuals that you talk to, like, I've never even left my city or my county? Like, what are some things that you do to kind of persuade them or open up their thought process of traveling?
I tell them that this is the perfect segue between traveling alone and being with a group. So you are traveling alone, you're getting on that plane alone from wherever you're coming from, but at the same time, you're going to get there. You'll be welcomed by Muslims, people from your community. There is a vetting process to my retreat, so you're not allowed to pay online on my website directly. Oh. I personally interview every single person on the phone or on video for 20 to 30 minutes.
Oh, we like that.
I think this is our interview process right here. So I think we're good.
So with the interview process, when you do that, like when you talk to people, are you like, they look like they need to go to Jamaica, or they need to go to Morocco? Do you base it like that? Because like you said earlier, like different cultures, like he might get finessed in Morocco. Let me take her to Jamaica.
It's so funny. Well, kind of, but I mean, sometimes I do recommend. I'm like, I think you're more suited for Morocco, or I highly recommend Jamaica. I mean, Jamaica's my baby, so I will most certainly always push Jamaica first and foremost because place is just out of this world, and I want Muslims to travel to places they're not used to traveling to.
Right.
Yourself out of your comfort zone, you know, and just be ready to be challenged. You know, I had a guest who was trying to explain to a hotel owner why we prayed five. First, she was running away from the dog. She's trying to make him understand.
That's it, dude.
This beautiful Somali sister is trying to tell the man we don't do dogs, right? Yeah. And you know, Mr. Fox. You know, Mr. Fox is the owner of this hotel restaurant. He loves his wine and his French ladies. He's not stressed about anything. So she's trying to explain to him why Muslims pray 5 times a day. The man looks at her and he's like, what kind of life are you living for you to bother God 5 times a day? I'm dying at the back. I'm like, this is, I go write these in my notebook. I'm like, oh, this is too funny. I gotta write this one down. So, listen, there's definitely an interview process, and I've rarely had to turn people down, but I have done it in the past where I was just like, listen, I don't think you're going to be a good fit for it. You seem to be looking for a different experience. You know, if you're worried about how loud the toilet flushes, or if there's a lizard, it's like, oh, just forget it.
Yeah. You have to be a certain level of grounded to go on these type of trips.
Yeah. And you know, it'll ruin the experience too. It'll ruin the experience for them and for other people and for myself. So when you're here, I want you to know what you're getting yourself into. I want you to know me, because you're traveling with me and my team. I just like to be very transparent, and I also like to know what people are looking out, what they're looking to get out of the experience, and also what they can bring to enrich it.
No, I do like that, and I know things have kind of changed a lot now because of COVID. So how have you been able to maneuver, you know, your retreats? What are some things that you kind of added in there to kind of help you be more versatile and lean as a businesswoman and entrepreneur?
You know, COVID, alhamdulillah, has been a good blessing. It's been our busiest year.
SubhanAllah, wow.
You know, we obviously postponed retreats, but alhamdulillah, we have 6 retreats coming up this summer, and 3 are sold out. And they're big people retreats, 30 people per trip.
You gotta save us a spot. Hold on.
Hey, I've been trying to work on the spot, bro. I've been trying to work on the spot.
3 tickets right there. 4.
And the best is yet to come, because inshallah, if all retreats sell out, we would be bringing more people this year than we have in the past 4 years combined.
Wow. So
you said 4 combined?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're getting a lot more referrals. We're getting returnees. We're getting people. My therapist recommended it. My sister came. My barber came. Hey, is that my neighbor? Like when I post the stories on.
So how many are you doing this coming year?
Inshallah, 6.
6. You said 3 are already sold out. What are the dates for the ones that are still available?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've got our famous Soul Rebel Tour, and that one explores the history of Islam in Jamaica. With Mustafa Briggs. We're doing it in collaboration with Sacred Footsteps. That one is from August 10th to the 16th, and there's still some space available. We have a Yaldam retreat, which is a woman only.
Can't go that one, bro.
I'm gonna use that one actually. A Yaldam retreat, and so the first one was sold out, and there's so much need for it in the community. Like our sisters want to travel. They have the funds for it. They're professionals. They work. That one is from June 28th to July 4th. And then I have a busy people retreat, and that one's for people who are busy and who can't give too much time, from July 21st to 25th, inshallah.
That's sick. Like I personally, I'm a big fan of what you've been doing, and I've been following along for a while, just because travel is something that it's taken me a little bit of time to just like get going. So to see it, like, I think that's probably the best part of Instagram and social media, is seeing things like that where people are getting a chance to get closer to the fitra, closer to the deen through life experiences. And so seeing it, and I remember when Mustafa in college, when I was like, all right, I gotta go on the next one. So inshallah, sign me up for this August. Young and Muslim, I'll be out there.
Please come. It's gonna be live, honestly, and so much blessings came from it. You know, I got a call from the mosque in St. Elizabeth today in Jamaica, and they said they needed some money, $500 to pay for a water bill, but it was some kind of water expense that needed to be paid. It's what time is it right now? Listen, it's 9:17 p.m. my time. I think I put the status up at about 11 this morning, and I kid you not, I've raised close to $4,000 just through my IG.
Wow.
People PayPaling me money, and they don't even know me. Some people know me because they've been on the trips.
Yeah.
They know who Rashid is, and they know the community, and they've been to the mosque. $4,000, subhanAllah, just so.
Subhanallah,
wow.
Man. You gotta do a post this week that says send young and Muslim to Jamaica. Here's the link. Swipe up.
Let's start a fund.
But no, Wafa, thank you. We really appreciate you coming on. This has been an amazing conversation, and we've learned a lot so far. So,
absolutely.
If people want to find you, they want to find more about Burgundy Roots, how can they do that?
Yes, so you can go to our website, burgundyroots.com, BURGUNDY roots, all one word, .com, and then you can find me on Instagram, Wafa Salam. You can find me through the Young and the Muslim, if anything. I'll be there sharing my thoughts, ideas, jokes. Thanks for having me.
Oh, hey, tell him about the before you go, tell him about the one girl that just recently got the reservation on your retreat. And she reserved it for a special somebody who's not really there yet.
Let me put the coffee down and I screenshotted this message. So I get a sister. She signed up this summer to a retreat. So she was like, all right, I'm coming by myself. Boom, boom, boom. I was like, yeah, no problem. Cool. Months go by. She sends me a message over the weekend. Okay. And she says, hey, Salam, can you let me know which retreat I'm signed up for? Am I signed up to the woman-only one? And I was like, no, you're not. You're actually signed up to a mixed retreat. She goes, oh, it sounds exciting. She says can I book a spot for my husband? I was like, sure, no problem. Book a spot for your husband. The rooms are there. Cool. And she responds back and she goes, OMG, yay, it sounds so exciting. Book that king room for us. Can I make a confession? I'm not married or engaged or seriously talking to anyone yet, but I'm making mad dua and taking steps along with my coach, and I know Allah's got me. So this is one of those steps. We're going to manifest this ish, and me and homie will be in Jamaica next summer, inshallah. So how do I reserve a spot for him with no name? And remind me again, what is the transfer information, please?
That's wild.
Wow.
She's ready to pay. I haven't taken the payment because I feel uneasy about this.
Look, you don't want to be responsible for that, right?
You know what I'm saying? So I think, I don't know, but I put that thing on my Instagram. Obviously, I blurred the name of my messenger. I said, go look at my Instagram story. It's all good. She just laughed. She's like, oh my God, the whole world is making dua for me. And then she goes, I'm just going to have to go ahead and book an apartment for him and I at this point.
Wow.
She's so confident that everyone's making dua.
I mean, Young Muslim family, make sure you guys pull through with them duas, all right? I mean, well, listen,
Thank
Muhammad.
You. Yes. It's been a great show. It's about that time, Jabril.
It's there.
Wrap it up.
It's there. So, if you guys want to follow us and engage with us, shoot us a DM or even get to know Wafa a little bit, how can they find us, Muhammad?
Yes, if you guys want to shoot us a message, hit us up on Instagram and Twitter. We are the most active there. That is Young and Muslim, YOUNG, the letter N, Muslim. And Jabril, if they want to listen to this podcast or send it to a friend and watch us, how can they do that?
So for any of the long-time listeners, you guys know that we did this backwards, but it's cool. It's cool.
Right, exactly.
If you guys want to listen to us, you can find us on all of your DSPs like SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the Google Play podcasts, and any random, like, in the whole places where you can listen to us. We're there as well. And if you want to see these beautiful faces right here, you can find us all on YouTube. Just look up The Young and Muslim Podcast, spelled out. Come and find us. Make sure you like, subscribe, and do what? Hit the bell notification. Ding.
Bing, bang.
And so, Muhammad.
Yes. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, Jabril.
Yes. So, for the last hour and 34 minutes, you have been listening to The Young and Muslim Podcast. I'm Jabril Salam.
And Muhammad Hassan.
This is...
Wafa.
Hey, she's quick. She's quick. She's quick. And we leave with the greens of peace.
Asalaamu
Alaikum.
Peace out, y'all.
Peace.